What's up, everyone? Welcome in. It's that time once again. The Sooners on SI podcast, episode 244, or as we're labeling it, Fasusi Day, one day later in the greater Oklahoma, North Texas area. I'm Ryan Chapman, as always, joined by the great John Hoover in the 918. John, how you doing?
We're doing great. Ready to get this season started, but some recruiting news first.
We do. As you listen to this, we are 8 days away from football. We will be talking about kickoff, Brent Venables, all that fun stuff, but he's not in Oklahoma City right now. He's by side a highway at a coffee shop. That's how you know he's on the scene doing the work. Randall Sweet down in Texas. He was at the Michael Fasusi commitment, which we record on Wednesdays. It's today, Thursday morning, as you're hearing this. You'll get used to that. But Randall, how's it going? How's your trip down?
The drive down was great. It's a nice, easy drive from Oklahoma City down to the DFW. And OU got some good news, so plenty for us to talk about and OU fans to not be upset about. I think that makes it a good day.
Yeah, let's dive right in there. Like I said, 8 days away. We'll talk about everything Brent Venables, everybody said, all the normal stuff. But the big news right now, Oklahoma gets their guy, five-star, consensus five-star offensive tackle, Michael Fasusi. He is the highest rated Bill Bedenbaugh commit he's ever gotten. So Oklahoma fans, guess what? Caden Green, delete that name from your memory. You don't have to think about it ever again. Randall, like you're obviously on site. Let us in. What you talked to Fasusi today, right?
Yes, we did talk to it.
Beautiful, beautiful. So he had an Oklahoma hat, a Texas hat, a Texas A&M hat on the table. It obviously came up crimson, but take it away. What was it like, and what did Fasusi have to say about Oklahoma?
Well, first, I have to say it was one of the more professional commitments I've ever been to. Hats off to Louisville. They had everything done very well, even down to media arriving, getting us escorted to the right place, giving us our name badges and everything. So I wanna first say hats off to them. They did a great job organizing that. Not all high school commitments are that organized, but I think that the support that Fasusi had there was really telling. His entire school. I don't want to say entire school, but it felt like the entire school was there in the auditorium cheering him on, laughing at every joke that was made on the On3 stream or, whenever they popped his social media on the screen. And I think if you watch the video that we have on our website or that I posted on my Twitter page, that you'll see, I mean, whenever he picks up that OU hat, whenever he makes that announcement, the crowd erupts. I mean, the volume level is really, really high there. And so I think it just shows you what type of person he is. He's got a lot of support there, a lot of people in his corner. Obviously, an elite prospect, but I think that it was really cool to see the way that his school was there backing him today. Obviously, he talked about only being this is family's fifth anniversary in America. It was today. That was kind of the significance of this commitment date. And so he talked a lot about that at his commitment. That was really cool to hear. And then really he just talked about his decision-making process, what went into that decision, and talked a lot about the development that Bill Bedenbaugh offers, kind of the past, the guys that he's put into the NFL, really citing that as a major factor for what went into his decision. I think I've kind of reported the past few days about their relationship that Bill Bedenbaugh has with Michael Fasusi. Really since January, we've kind of touched on that as soon as on SI. But today he kind of talked about not only that relationship, but the development aspect of what Oklahoma offers, and that really being a major factor in his recruitment. I think that a thing that OU fans will like to hear too is he said that when he left his Texas visit, that's when he knew that Oklahoma was the right school for him. He said he went to Texas and he left thinking that there's no way that they could live up to what OU had already shown him. And so I think that, um, you know, while, with these elite prospects, you're always on, flip watch until signing day. Just in general, not anything specific with him. I don't think that that's going to be something Sooners fans have to worry about because the development that Bill Bedenbaugh offers, that's not going anywhere anytime soon unless he decides to up and leave Norman, which would be pretty shocking.
But and Hoove, the development piece has always been there, and it's kind of been a popular rallying cry. I don't know if rallying cry is the right word, but you have the development, you have it's a great graphic, right? Here's what all the many millions that Oklahoma offensive linemen have made in the NFL, produced by Bill Bedenbaugh. But the question coming into this class, Hoove, was can Bill Bedenbaugh uptick recruiting like they'll need to do in the SEC? Already had Ryan Foje, who's really re-ranked. I was talking to Randall the other day. He reminds me of Jackson Arnold, the way that when he committed, really, really solid 4-star, and every time the rankings come out, higher. Is he going to be a fringe 5-star guy? Fasusi's the no doubter. What does this mean, for Bill Bedenbaugh to knock this thing out of the park? And Randall, you mentioned it's a big day. Wednesday was for the Fasusi family. Wednesday, big day for Bill Bedenbaugh. Not a bad way to celebrate a birthday with a new 5-star coming in the door.
Yeah, he gets to unwrap a new 5-star for his birthday. That's pretty cool. It's almost like Bill Bedenbaugh is used to bringing in lumps of clay, right, and then molding them into a beautiful sculpture. Well, here he's got a beautiful sculpture handed to him. Not handed to him. He worked for it. He went out and got the kid, landed him himself. But this is I don't want to say that Fasusi's the finished product. No high school player is, as you'll see by this list that I'm getting ready to run down. But he's as close to, if you believe the recruiting rankings and the way he dominates high school football, he's as close to a finished product, or a product maybe ready to play college football, that Oklahoma has ever had under Bill Bedenbaugh. And that includes Caden Green last year. I think Caden Green came in with fairly low expectations. Talking to his parents before at the Under Armour All-America game, Caden Green wasn't coming in here saying, hey, I'm going to come in and I'm going to start as a freshman. That would be nice, but I'm not, pretending that that's going to happen. I know there's a bunch of guys in front of me, and I'm going to work, and I'm going to impress the coaches. I'm going to do my job. And by midseason, he was a starter as a true freshman. Fasusi's got better high school credentials and rankings and ratings and all that stuff than Caden Green did, like you referenced. So I think that's important. Now, here's a couple of things I want to throw at you guys. All right. Pro Football Focus told us this week that the 2 highest rated rookie offensive linemen, most efficient, best blockers, however you want to say it, fewest busts, I don't know. Whatever their system is, it's proprietary, so we don't really know. Pro Football Focus says the top 2 rookie offensive linemen in the league this preseason during their rookie years, number 1 is Tyler Guyton, number 2 is Walter Rouse. Tyler Guyton was a tight end at TCU. Walter Rouse was a neurosurgeon at Stanford, and now both guys are the highest graded rookie offensive linemen in the NFL this preseason. That's not a coincidence. That's Bill Bedenbaugh. He can damn develop some offensive linemen. What do you guys think about that real quick?
Yeah, and it shows you too, it's not just he's done it different kinds of ways, right? You've seen Cody Ford, what he's done, Ben Powers, Drew Samia, Orlando Brown, very different. Like, you just look at what Orlando Brown is doing right now, a guy that had the infamous combine, which just shows you that the Underwear Olympics, as the great Kelly Gregg always calls it, are not always the end all be all to how good of a football player are you. Orlando Brown is that kind of just mauler, hit viper sort of offensive tackle. And Tyler Guyton is every combine, every scout, every measurable's dream, right? He is the uber athlete who's showing a little bit of that nasty side. I don't know how much of that second preseason game for the Cowboys you caught of Dallas, Tyler Guyton going up against Max Crosby of the Raiders and him just putting him on the turf, and Max Crosby going, I want to be on that side of the offensive line. This is the preseason. I was just riding the bike, getting back in. I was not expecting a fight with Tyler Guyton. It's just been a matter of time. It's felt like, was NIL going to be the push that helped Bill Bedenbaugh say, okay, I may not be the biggest personality as far as what you usually think of in recruiting. He's kind of an old school guy, but the production's there. Can the NIL get the foot in the door? Is it as simple as having Harrison and Tyler Guyton go first round, in back-to-back years, that finally he completes the Thanos Infinity Gauntlet with, now he's got first round picks too? Was that it? It's just kind of been one of the more puzzling things when it comes to Oklahoma's staff, because when you watch what they do, and we're going to talk about it here in a little bit, obviously Oklahoma's offensive line, the big storyline coming to this year, I think the prevailing thought is whatever the ceiling is, you feel like Bill Bedenbaugh's not going to put a bad unit out there. That's just what he does. This was the needed next step for Oklahoma recruiting. They need to start stacking these guys on the offensive line, because Randall, as we all know, when you head to the SEC, it's going to be one in the trenches. Feels like in the 2024 class, they took that step forward on the defensive line, Randall. Now 2025, you look at this group as a whole, feels like the kind of group they need if they really want to compete and not turn into Nebraska, as Colin Cowherd from a year ago. That clip surfaced again this week.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the 2025 class, starting on the offensive line, because of what transpired today. I mean, you've got 4 commits, 3 of them are 4 or 5-star commits. So, 3 blue chip commits on the offensive line this year. Obviously, you mentioned the defensive line last year. You had a 5-star prospect in David Stone, Jaden Jackson, a 4-star prospect who could start this year as a true freshman. So, the way that we've seen Brent Venables and company building up these recruiting classes is impressive. Again, you mentioned 2025 is the same way. I think after Fasusi's commitment today, depending on what service you look at, OU's back in the top 5 nationally in that 2025 class. Obviously, they've got a 4-star quarterback, Kevin Sperry, who's been there throughout this whole class. You mentioned Ryan Foja, another top 100 player on the offensive line. You've got a gauntlet of wide receivers in this 2025 class. So I think that, the way that OU's been able to recruit in this upcoming cycle, Michael Fasusi just being really the icing on top of the cake. You had a good solid group that was sitting around the bottom of the top 10. And now with you get that 5-star, the guy that really is going to headline that class, and he pushes that class near the top 5. Of course, OU's not done. There's still a few guys that they're going to be after in 2025, but I think now you've really got the bones, the meat of this class.
I want to finish this point about these NFL guys and these recruiting rankings. And Michael Fasusi, if you're watching, pay special attention to this one, because we're talking specifically about recruiting rankings and how they project and how guys develop. We talked about Bill Bedenbaugh getting a couple of guys in who he put in the NFL draft that are now dominating in the NFL as rookies. So he's a developmental guy. So Michael Fasusi, if you're watching, get yourself developed by Bill Bedenbaugh. You come in, I'm going to read you some names. You come in as the highest rated offensive lineman really in this whole list, okay, of guys that I'm going to go back to 2000. Wes Sims in 2000 was the previous highest rated Sooner, okay? Fasusi comes in right behind defensive lineman Gerald McCoy and right in front of Brandon Williams, former running back, and Peyton Bowen among the 5-stars. He's a higher rated recruit than Trey McGuire or Joe Mixon or Theo Weiss or DeMarco Murray. He's got the credentials. He's got the ratings, okay? Now here's what you need to do with that, Mr. Fasusi. Wes Sims is a guy who was a 2-time all Big 12 honoree, I think second team and third team or honorable mention, something like that. Bray Walker was on that list, okay? That's 2. Bray Walker didn't play much at OU. Stephen Good was on that list. We're talking 4-star, 5-star offensive lineman in OU history. Stephen Good didn't play a ton at OU. Brandon Braxton was on that list. That's 4 guys. Brandon Braxton came in, played some as a freshman, broke his leg, never got back to quite where he was. Savion Byrd is in that. We're using 247 Sports. This is the top 100 recruits in OU history. These are the offensive linemen in that group. Brandon Braxton, Savion Byrd is on that list. Nate Anderson is on that list, top 100 guy. Those guys didn't play much at OU. They didn't get developed. Didn't happen for them for whatever reason. Andrew Rame is on that list. Now, he was a 3-year starter at center. Obviously, he did get developed. Caden Green is on that list. Caden Green was in town for 6 games and decided to leave. So it's easy to get excited about a guy who's got 5-star credentials. You need to see him develop. You know who you do not see on this list? You do not see Orlando Brown in the top 247 players in the last 25 years in OU football. You do not see Orlando Brown. You do not see Ben Powers. You do not see Creed Humphrey. You do not see Trent Williams. You do not see Lane Johnson. You do not see Cody Ford. Those are 6 guys that are kicking ass in the NFL right now. Hundreds of millions of dollars of NFL contracts. They were not in the top 247 players in OU recruiting history. So think about that. Another quick guy, give you a couple more names of guys that are currently in the NFL. Tyrese Robinson was on the list at number 103. Anton Harrison shows up at number 169. Marquise Hayes shows up. He was number 226. And then Darrell Williams, who played forever for the Panthers and the Bills, he was at number 227 on this list. So you've got guys who came in low and took their careers to the NFL. You got guys who came in with high ratings and never did anything at OU. I don't know what that says, other than Michael Fasusi needs to come in with the attitude that he's ready to be developed by Bill Bedenbaugh.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what he said to us today in his media availability after his commitment. He said that what really excited him about Bill Bedenbaugh and Oklahoma was the development. I asked him about Anton Harrison, about Tyler Guyton, seeing those guys go back to back, and he said, you know, he pointed again to that development aspect and said exactly that he saw that Bill Bedenbaugh was developing these guys. He got to sit through a film session with Bill Bedenbaugh and kind of see what all that entails and what goes into that, see how Bill Bedenbaugh is as a coach. And Daniel Akinkunmi actually said something similar whenever he was a recruit, that he got to sit through a film session. He got to see how intense, how passionate Bill Bedenbaugh was. And that's what really sold him. And so I think that, the guys who really have that drive, who can handle the coach who's going to scream at you, who doesn't care what you're rated or how much NIL money you're making, if you can handle that style of coaching and you can develop, you've got the traits to develop, or even just the will to go out there and do what the coach tells you to. I think those are the guys who will succeed under Bill Bedenbaugh. By all accounts, Michael Fasusi seems like that type of guy. Of course, it's hard to know exactly until they get into Bill Bedenbaugh's hands, until they get into onto campus. But he seems like that type of guy. Very humble. He went around and thanked every media member that attended the ceremony afterwards. So really, really nice guy. Again, a guy who seems like he's ready for the work. He mentioned that multiple times, that he's ready to put in the work. I mentioned Daniel Akinkunmi actually hosted Michael Fasusi when Michael took his official visit to OU. So there's a relationship there. I'm sure that he kind of heard a little bit about the same thing that Daniel Akinkunmi saw in Bill Bedenbaugh. And so I think by all means, he will be ready to work when he gets to know him, will be ready to develop. He's got the athletic traits. I mean, the power is ridiculous when you watch him play. He can move really well, and the combination of that agility and that power is very uncommon. That's what makes him an elite offensive lineman. I think that if he's got the effort, the willingness to be coached by Bill Bedenbaugh to go with those things, then he'll definitely be a special offensive lineman at the next level, even in the SEC.
It's the old college football adage, right? It's about the Jimmies and Joes. And that's where I think the recruiting conversation can sometimes get off the rails. When you're talking about a class, a school, they need to stack numbers. It's a numbers game, right? You may be able to develop a 3-star into a 4-star into a 5-star production, but you know what's a lot better? If you just start with 15 5-stars, because if those guys hit, their ceiling is way higher than anybody else. The boom or bust potential, that is an individual conversation, right? That is, each player has to come in. They have to avoid the injury bug. That's one big thing. They have to do the work. They have to take care of that. For Fasusi, I think the most interesting thing will be, we talk about development. Usually when that conversation happens, like the offensive line, we're kind of mentally saying development means you sit a couple of years and you get in there. If Mike Tarquin wins that left tackle job, Oklahoma will be looking to replace a tackle again next year. Regardless, it doesn't sound like anyone's just really stepped in and taken life by the horns. You'll have an Eddie Pierre-Louis in the wings. How much run does he get this year? All that stuff. But there might be a pathway for Fasusi to do both, develop and play early. So it'll be really interesting to see. That was obviously mega successful with Caden Green. Caden Green would be here. He would be starting on the left side of Oklahoma's offensive line. That was an NIL tampering situation, alleged, whatever. More to that, transfer portal is probably the right words, than a development thing. So we shall see. As always, Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com. All of Randall's coverage from everything from the Fasusi commitment yesterday. That's still going to be pouring out as we inch ever so closer here. But let's turn the page out of recruiting into the guys that are on campus making those preparations to get going on next Friday, 8 days away. Toe meets leather in Norman. We talked this week with Brent Venables. We talked to Grayson Halton, to Caden Woolard. We talked to Mike Tarquin and Bauer Sharp. I believe that gets everybody that we talked to on Tuesday night. Let's read the vibes a little bit, gentlemen. Brent Venables gave a classic 8.5-minute opening statement. Oklahoma football is back, baby. That's how you know it. And we talked to those 4 guys that I mentioned. What stood out to you from everything this week, media-wise, down in Norman?
Brent talked, and I think this was unprompted, about the kicking situation, which we'll let Randall get into that here in a minute. So I asked a follow-up about just who's going to return kicks, and he named about 11 guys. I don't think it's going to be 11 guys that return kicks, but he said he likes these guys: Jalil Farouk, Peyton Bowen, Billy Bowman, Brennan Thompson, Sam Franklin. He said, I like Gavin Sawchuk and I like Javante Barnes. I think it's kind of tough to sell your potential starting running backs back there. I'd like to see Brennan Thompson finish a college football season healthy. So that's kind of a tough sell as well. Maybe Sam Franklin. We know he's got breakaway speed. Maybe Sam Franklin is a good option. We know Jalil Farouk can do it. He averaged 22 yards per return last year. My two choices, guys, for this job are arguably two of your most important players on defense, and that's Peyton Bowen and Billy Bowman. Those guys are special. I saw it in high school. You could see an interception or a punt or a kickoff, and poof, there they go to the house. They did it frequently in high school, so I think they've got a special talent for it. They would be my first choices. And then Farouk, again, an experienced guy. But that wasn't good enough for me when he named a bunch of dudes, so I had to ask him about his new special teams analyst, actually getting to coach the special teams this year. It's a new rule. The NCAA says, okay, enough. We'll let your analysts coach your players. It's fine. Stop asking us 500 times every offseason, because that's what it took to get this to happen. The NCAA allows analysts to coach now. Like before, Jay Nunez last year would stand out there with the whistle and he would hold up a little sheet and he would try to avoid talking to the players because he's an analyst. He's not allowed to coach on the field. It's so stupid. So the NCAA said, all right, your analyst can coach. So now you see Doug Deacon out there on the field. He's talking to this guy. He's talking to that guy. He's talking to the holder. He's talking to the kicker. He's talking to the snapper. And now he's talking to the cover teams and he's yelling at all of them. And it's no longer, position coaches who are saying, no, wait, how do I coach special teams again? They don't have to worry about it. So OU's better on special teams. Problem is, everybody who has a special teams analyst is also better on special teams. But OU needs to be better than what they were last year, which is 127th in the country.
Yeah, that was something we talked about last pod when we were out there for the little sliver of practice we got to see. That was the thing that stood out, is you got to hear Doug Deacon over the speakers, over the intercom, doing everything, making sure that everyone understood, this is exactly how I want you to attack. This is where I need the gunners to be, all this stuff. It was pretty comprehensive. When you get back to the returner conversation, when Brent Venables said the names Gavin Sawchuk and Javante Barnes, who, if you'll understand, I heard the voice of the great Brady Trantham, our good friend, screaming, what about DeMarco in 2008? And then Brady went off on a tangent about how Oklahoma would have beat Florida if DeMarco Murray was healthy. Yep. Here's the thing, 2008 Oklahoma, 2024 Oklahoma, two different teams. That 2008 Oklahoma team, national championship contender, obviously made it to the BCS title game. This Oklahoma team, Brent Venables has alluded to a line of thinking like this on special teams before in his previous 2 years. They are not good enough to save guys on special teams. They have to put their best returners out there because there are questions about the offensive line. There are questions about, is Oklahoma going to have the depth on the interior if Dejon Terry breaks a chin strap for a game and they're struggling to try and figure that out. It's a group that has some question marks there on top of everything we saw last year. If Billy Bowman, who house called 3 different interceptions last year, I feel bad for the Billy Bowman return highlight tape. Everyone's so infatuated with Peyton Bowen, rightly so, that they forget that Billy was an electric returner in the Denton area before Peyton Bowen was. I think you have to roll those guys out there if those are your best guys. I guess the big question for that would be, Randall, do you have enough faith in Robert Spears-Jennings? Not only that, but you've written about Michael Boganowski on the site here over the last week or so. We've heard about Reggie Power, stuff like that. Do you have enough faith in the young depth, the untested guys behind Billy Bowman, Peyton Bowen, Robert Spears-Jennings to feel comfortable throwing both your safeties out there potentially in different return roles?
Yeah, I think that's definitely an interesting conversation. I mean, Robert Spears-Jennings is a guy who's played a little bit more, but you mentioned those freshman guys, the Boganowskis, Jaden Hardys, Reggie Powers. By all accounts, it sounds like those guys have had really good fall camps. I think all three of them were early enrollees as well, so they've been getting to know that defense since the spring. But still, very young guys to throw out there for meaningful snaps in the SEC, and so that makes me wonder if maybe a guy like Billy Bowman, they just take it easy on him and say, you just worry about playing safety. Go win the Thorpe Award. We'll let someone else take care of special teams, especially because a guy like Peyton Bowen might still be rotating in with Robert Spears-Jennings. He might be coming to the coaching staff saying, I want to play. And of course, the coaching staff, they know he's a very good football player. They want to get him on the field however they can. So, I think that it's it's an interesting conversation, but maybe there you go with the younger legs to take some of those hits in the return game.
I think Hoover said it best. Job number one, catch the football. Job number two, don't fumble the football. And that's kind of what you wrote about here Wednesday morning.
Yeah. Here's the deal with Doug Deacon. He's already started to improve some of that, I think. Venables said yesterday, he's somebody that has an expertise. He's somebody that has a vision for exactly what he wants it to look like. And now Venables says, he can be a part of that development on the field as well as off the field, including game days. So he said, he summed it up again. And we've asked him about Deacon in the past, but now that he's actually worked with him for a training camp, I wanted to get his latest thoughts on Doug Deacon. He said he's incredibly passionate, high energy, really smart, great teacher, inspires and motivates as good as any coach I've ever been around. He said the players have tremendous respect for him, and he's just a really effective communicator. So Brent Venables 100% expects special teams improvement this year.
Not the only special teams action we got. Guys, we're 8 days from kickoff, and we don't have a depth chart yet. We're going to talk about the depth chart in a minute. We also got some SC tiebreakers, stuff like that. Before we dive into that, Randall, who've alluded to it, Brent Venables, unprompted. He did a lot unprompted on Tuesday, but unprompted, he rolled into the kicker battle. Last we heard, you go all the way back to the coach's luncheon. I can't remember George Stoyer, Eddie Ross, someone was on hand that talked about Brent Venables saying Tyler Keltner was kind of the odds-on favorite heading into camp. Did we get any kind of update on Tuesday as to if that is still the case down in Norman?
We did get an update, but the update we got seems to only make things more confusing and maybe contradict a little bit of what Brent Venables said. I don't want, maybe not contradict, but maybe make it a little more confusing to those who aren't seeing practice every day, because he praised Zach Schmidt. He talked about how close the battle between Keltner and Zach Schmidt was, saying that, Zach Schmidt's got a real boot that he can kick the ball. And we know that he's got it. We've seen him kick the ball far, but just not necessarily with accuracy or consistency. And Brent Venables said the same thing that we've heard him say about Zach Schmidt before, that he's making his kicks in practice, that he's been great in practice, which if you've been following us since last fall, that was what Brent Venables told us in a press conference last fall when Zach Schmidt was, missing some of those clutch kicks mid-game in crucial situations. So it'll be interesting to see if that translates to the field. I think that Tyler Keltner is probably still the most likely guy to run out there with the ones on next Friday when OU plays Temple. But again, it'll be interesting to see, because it feels like Keltner is maybe the more consistently accurate of the two, but if you need someone to hit a deeper field goal, maybe Schmidt's the better option there. It'll be interesting to see. And again, practice is one thing. It'll be really telling when those guys actually step out onto the field.
Let me see if I can simplify this, Hoover, and you tell me where I've gone astray. Zach Schmidt has the biggest leg in Norman. Zach Schmidt also has had issues being reliable in clutch moments in actual football games when the lights are on. His numbers were a little bit better a year ago than 2 years ago, but Randall, you and I were talking, the whole group, I guess, the whole staff was talking. We were talking with Bryce as well a couple nights ago, and you mentioned his numbers looked a lot better in 2023 than 2022 because Oklahoma stopped rolling him out there to kick clutch field goals. And so it feels like a situation of, if you're going off of practice, Zach Schmidt makes them, but I think there's a reality in the background of how many kickers do you know that didn't have the mojo for 2 years to suddenly roll out there and kick successfully in clutch situations, which maybe is why a Keltner who might not have as big a leg as a Schmidt is still in this race, regardless of what the actual charted numbers are every day in practice.
Yeah, here's what Brent said. He was just kind of opening statement. Here's what I think. Here's how practice has gone. Here's the tenor of the team. Said he got into kicking on his own. He said, I love where we're at in the kicking game right now. Still have a battle there with our place kickers. That'll go through the end of this week, and then we'll make a decision. Really feel like we would need both guys potentially this season. Okay, which two guys are that? Brent continues. Zach's got a really big leg, and he's really good at the kickoffs. And then he jumps into the punter. Luke Elzinga's done a great job as a punter. Ashton Logan has done a great job as a punter. He's had a good camp as a punter. Liam Evans, the freshman kicker, has done some good things. He forgot to mention the other kicker, Tyler Keltner, if we're to believe that Tyler Keltner was, when he said it, the odds-on favorite to win this job. So what Randall said is right. It's a little confusing he said, we're going to need both guys. And then he only named one of them. But Keltner, here's the deal. Keltner is a guy, I think he's a little undersold on the power of his leg. He set the record for longest distance at his previous stop. What was that, East Tennessee? An FCS school. And we've talked about FCS versus FBS football. It's the same exact when you're kicking through the uprights. The uprights are the same size, same distance, same dip far apart, all that good stuff. So I don't think it's going to be a problem for him. I know the crowd's bigger. I know the games have more at stake on them, that kind of thing. The coaches are more well paid. The players are now more well paid than on the FBS level. But Keltner is a guy that has kicked in games under pressure. So, and has made a high percentage. So my guess is, this is just a guess from where we're sitting, that he's going to be the guy, as Brent Venables might say, is the odds-on favorite. I think he's going to win the job.
This might not be great for the take industry. Not going to get me the invite from Stephen A. I think we're just going to have to wait and see. And I don't think that's a satisfactory answer for anyone, but it's probably the most correct. So we shall see. For me, the last little thing here before we take a second, reset, and get into some depth chart talk was the injury update on two fronts. First off, Britt Venables basically said nobody really in danger of anything long-term or anything like that other than Jaden Gibson that we've already talked about. But there have been some, it sounds like the offensive line's been banged up a little bit. Not anything that Brent Venables expects those guys to miss Temple or anything like that. Brent Venables didn't say this, but I believe like if Oklahoma's playing Texas tomorrow, all those guys probably be available. So if that puts you on the realm of seriousness, all that stuff. But it is incredibly important for all those guys to be available because Oklahoma has 3 tune-ups before Pierce and that Tennessee defensive line come to town. They've got to figure out quick, not just chemistry, cohesion, who their best 5 is, but then game 5, they take the show on the road. They need that built-in communication, all that. The other kind of injury update, very, very quickly at the end, at the buzzer, that Brent Venables tossed out there was on Andrel Anthony, a guy that fully cleared. He went so far to say that if Andrel opts to go no brace, that he doesn't have to have it. It's not a requirement by any means. So certainly a great sign there. I'm just still really curious mentally where Andrel Anthony's at. Is again, we've talked about it the last 2 podcasts. Talking to the athlete, ACL, knee injury. It's just as mental as it is that physical rehab, especially for a speed guy. So overall, though, Hoove, good news is it sounds like Oklahoma pretty healthy, or outside of the Jaden Gibson unfortunate situation, they've avoided anything major, knock on wood, at this point as they close the door on fall camp and really get into game prep.
Yeah, Brent seemed pretty adamant about guys' health. I asked him specifically about Dasan McCulloch. He said, nope, he has not been at practice. So that's going to be a problem, I think. And if we, especially if we don't get to see him in the season opener because that thing lingers. He called it, let's clarify this. He called it originally a little toe injury. Do you guys think that means the little toe, or does that mean a little injury on his toe?
I think it means a little, because he's classified someone as having a little bit of a hamstring before, your hamstring is either there or it's been blown off, I guess. I don't think there's really a spectrum on if your hamstring exists or not. That's kind of my read on the Venables injury updates.
Okay. Yeah, that's all I got on the injuries then.
Yeah, Randall, how important on the offensive line front is it just to have every option available for Bill Bedenbaugh? Because we know he's going to want to tinker.
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting. Brent Venables had some. He said he would prefer to have all of his offensive linemen available, but he wasn't sure whether those guys were all going to be ready for the opening game. And I think, you kind of mentioned it. It would be nice for Bill Bedenbaugh to have all 5 of his starters out there for that week 1 game against Temple, to kind of get those guys used to playing with each other, especially because, again, this is going to be 5 guys who most of them have never played at Oklahoma, let alone together. And so, you would like to give those guys a chance to gel together. But it sounds like there might be some guys who aren't able to get into the lineup until later in the year. We're not really sure. It sounds like OU isn't really sure, or they just didn't want to let us know specifically. But I would expect that by the start of SEC play, that entire offensive line is good and healthy. And like you said, you prefer to have them healthier earlier, available to play if possible, so you can get a look at what they look like together, kind of see what your best 5 are in a real life, as you always say, when the bullets are flying.
Yeah, Temple is a school that was a pretty bad football team last year that then struggled with player retention over the offseason. We're excited for kickoff, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend like this Temple team's a big test. You're going to see a lot of the freshmen, a lot of the backups anyway in the second half. And if you don't, then we will have a very interesting post-game experience. But I just think it's really important to start that process of building, hey, this is what it is to communicate along the line of scrimmage during the game, things like that, because it's just different. Any offensive lineman who played at a high level will tell you it could be 4 of the 5 guys coming back from like a Joe Moore quality group. You miss one of those and you have to learn everything all over again because you have to think as 5, not as 1. So things to track there as we inch ever so closer, 8 days away from kickoff. Gentlemen, next week, we expect at some point to get our first depth chart of the year. Let's take a quick timeout, reset, and dive into some of the biggest things that we'll be looking at immediately when we flip our eyes over to that depth chart as we get ready for week 1, Oklahoma and Temple coming up here in a second. All right, we're back, and as always, it's time for me to shamelessly plug all of our stuff. The website, Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com. Just bookmark that bad boy, or si.com/college/Oklahoma. It's all the same stuff, and you know the drill. All of Randall's coverage from down in Louisville, all the videos, whether you want to see Michael Fasusi's actual commitment, whether you want to see that ceremony, his interview with Randall and the other media members gathered, all the videos from practice on Tuesday. And hey, make sure you have that bad boy bookmark, because Monday, our first Brent Venables press conference, the official Brent Venables press conference, usually going to be on Tuesdays, short game week. It'll be on Monday. All that video will be there. You can also hit it up, John Hoover Media on YouTube. Just go to the YouTube, search John Hoover Media. And then, as always, follow us all on X, the big ship, the mothership, at Sooners on SI. You can follow Hoove at John E. Hoover. I'm _ Ryan Chapman on X. Randall is Randall Sweet 5, as well as our guy Bryce McKinnis. He's at McKinnis Bryce, and Dakota Gregory at Dakota Gregory. And again, Sooners on SI. That's the one overarching handle that has everything, all that fun stuff. All right. Things that coincide with game week number 1, things that coincide with Brent Venables press conference number 1 that'll come out on Monday will be the depth chart. I don't know when the depth chart is officially going to drop. Typically, though, our game notes package that includes the first depth chart is waiting for us at the first press conference. So let's just dive in. You've got the whole depth chart. The world is your oyster. Randall, when we flip those game notes over or when they send the tweet out, what's the first position group that you're darting to?
Well, I think we talked about it on the back end of the our other segment. It's the offensive line for me. I really want to see, one, who's listed as the starters, to see who's healthy and just who's won those jobs. I mean, where is Jacob Sexton playing? Who's won the tackle positions? Is Jacob Sexton playing guard? And if he's not playing guard, who's that other guard spot aside from Fabechi Nuevo? And I think now, as we've gotten further into fall camp, further into the summer, now we're wondering, is Branson Hickman going to be the starting center? Is Josh Bates going to be listed on that depth chart? What is the 2 deep going to look like? Who are going to be the guys behind some of those offensive linemen that have won those jobs? Where are the young guys like a Heath Ozida? Logan Howland is a guy that I personally am a really big fan of the potential he's got. Can he make this depth chart? So I think the offensive line is going to be the most interesting to me. And just really, Eddie Pierre-Louis is another freshman who could be on the 2 deep. That would be really interesting to see. We've heard a lot of good things about him through camp. And so just really seeing who those second guys are, and again, who won those starting jobs, how that kind of shook out. And again, maybe that'll give us an insight into who's going to be healthy for week 1 too.
I bet there's a ton of oars there, but my expectation is literally just 3 things. Fabechi Wiwu, welcome to right guard. Congratulations. I'm pretty confident there. I feel like Jake Taylor will be your right tackle, and that Sexton's going to start. It's just going to be left tackle, left guard. I would guess left guard probably, but I'm expecting to see a ton of oars there. Hoove, when you open it up, I think we're all going to look at the offensive line. Is that all kind of line up with what your expectation is? And then once you're done digesting the offensive line, what's that next position group that you're flipping to see what's the deal here for week 1?
Yeah. So my expectation is Tarquin at left tackle, Sexton at left guard. I personally, if I were Bill Bedenbaugh, I would have a tough time moving Sexton off of tackle. I think his long-term future is at tackle. I think he's a potential All-American type at tackle. I think he's he's been so impressive this preseason. Just, talking to him and listening to the other guys talk about him. The way he finished the season last year, very impressive. I've mentioned before, he came in as a recruit looking like a Boy Scout. He's walking out looking like, or starting his second year looking like a lumberjack. Bigger, brawny, strong, tall, 6'7", whatever he is, huge dude. And he's got long arms and he's got a beard now. I mean, you got to love that. Trying to think, who else do I like? Hickman is probably the center, right? But I guess to finish off my point on Sexton, he should be the left tackle, but if he's better as a left guard than the person that would play guard, and meaning Tarquin is better tackle than whoever they would have at guard, then I guess I get that. But Hickman should be the center, probably, you would think, at this point in his career. He's on the Remington, and he's got all conference accolades, and he started, 33 games in his career. He's ready to go. Bates has probably got another year to learn under him and play alongside him, I think. Jake Taylor is definitely the right tackle if he's healthy, which he has not been in preseason. And if he's not healthy, I think we're starting to hear, and I caught this on the Oklahoma Breakdown podcast, Spencer Brown might be making a comeback after a difficult spring. So Spencer Brown, transfer from Michigan State, is somebody that could be in that, if not the rotation, might be in the starting lineup.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I expect, like I said, a ton of oars there. I think the wide receivers are going to be pretty set. I'm expecting Burks, Farouk, Anderson. I think the real intrigue there is just going to be how everyone is backfilled and listed behind those guys. I think that's probably pretty consensus. Someone just jump out and stop me if not, but I don't think we need to spend a ton of time on the frontline guys at wide receiver. Yeah. I think similarly, you're probably going to see an or with Jake Roberts or Bauer Sharp at tight end. What I'm interested is it Javonte Barnes or Gavin Sawchuk at running back? I know that Sawchuk had the strong finish. I'm still expecting great things from Gavin Sawchuk, but by all accounts, Javonte Barnes is back. I think you might finally get the thunder and lightning that Javonte Barnes talked about in that Cheez-It Bowl post game. And then Randall, it becomes where is Taylor Tatum in all of this? What is Caleb Hicks? Where is he on the depth chart? Sam Franklin is a guy that's been mentioned. I don't know how much run he's going to get at running back, but this is where we were all surprised this time a year ago with the Tawi Walker of it all at running back, Brandon.
Yeah, I think the running back room will be a really interesting position because, it's not like wide receiver where you put 3 out on the field at a time. The most you're going to put out on the field at once is 2. And, Oklahoma's probably not going to run a 2-back set all that often. Maybe some now that Seth Luttrell's calling plays. But again, 2-back set in modern college football is not going to play very often. So, Gavin Sawchuk, I'm sure, will be either the solo starter or, like you said, an or with Javonte Barnes. And if he is listed as an or with Javonte Barnes, I think that that's really interesting because that probably means that Javonte Barnes had a great offseason, good enough to be up there with a guy who, like Hoover's mentioned before, averaged over 6 yards a carry last year, closed the year with, I think, 6 or 7 consecutive 100-yard performances. So or five consecutive 100-yard performances. So if Javonte Barnes has done enough this offseason to be listed as an or with him, that's probably a really good sign. And then if he is listed as an or with him, like you said, who comes in behind him? Is that a Taylor Tatum already? And if he is already, the third back in that rotation behind 2 guys like Barnes and Sawchuk, that's a pretty good look for a true freshman who enrolled this summer. Like you mentioned, where is Caleb Hicks and all that? Because he's a guy who physically looks good. We haven't really seen him play much, but he looked really good when he got the ball in the spring game. Sam Franklin, a guy, again, who we've talked about, over 1,300 yards, I believe, at his former school at the FCS level. So a guy who's been productive. But again, how do those guys shake out behind the guys that we are pretty sure are going to be the top 2? That's what's going to be really interesting to look at. And again, how many touches do those guys get behind Barnes and Sawchuk throughout the year? Because in the week 1, it'll probably be a lot. So how does that, kind of disperse throughout the season?
What's fun is reading the comments on the YouTube channel or your replies on Twitter or anywhere you come across them where somebody has an opinion on the running backs. It's Barnes for one guy, and for the next person, it's definitely Sawchuk. And the FCS people, the FCS people and the UT Martin people for sure think it's Sam Franklin. But there's been a lot of momentum in the public too, obviously for Taylor Tatum, the number 1 running back in the country. you mentioned it. Caleb Hicks has got a lot of fans who are saying that dude just looks different. That dude just plays different. So it's fun to speculate. And I think all those guys are going to get carries this year. After I figure out who's playing on the offensive line, guys, my eyes are going straight to the backup quarterback. Is it Casey Thompson or is it Michael Hawkins? You've got experience and maturity versus almost unlimited athletic ability and youthful confidence. That's a battle I think that's going to go back and forth all season long.
Well, it was going to be Jackson Arnold, as we all know. That Jackson Arnold, awful. He was going to be the backup quarterback, and then you weren't. No, okay, we're kidding. Here's actually what I think the calculus might be at backup quarterback, and this is pure speculation. It's a great battle that can wage all year long if everything goes to plan, which is that Jackson Arnold's healthy. I think if Jackson Arnold has a chin strap pop off in the Texas game and need a drive, Casey Thompson, welcome to the show. You've played here before. You get that. If Jackson Arnold, heaven forbid, goes down or decides to join the cast of Big Brother, because I hate putting stuff out, he's not playing. I think what time of the year really determines who is that guy. If it's a disaster scenario and you're talking early pre-Texas, I think Hawkins has the upside, and I think Oklahoma's going to kind of say, if Arnold goes down and misses an extended period of time, they're going to get a free pass anyway, probably, on whatever the results are. You might as well roll with the young buck. Yep. If it's one game, he gets a concussion protocol a la the BYU game, and we're talking about the LSU game, and it's one game away from the end of the regular season. Maybe Hawkins that far down is a little bit different, but if they need right now, based off what we know today, someone to go in the third quarter of the Tennessee game to make sure that they start off 1-0 in SEC play, I think that's where we've heard about Casey Thompson and just the quick decision-making that he has. I think that might be a fluid situation that's honestly kind of dependent on what they think the Jackson Arnold of it all is going to look like for that.
Yeah, I mean, to mention, to go with your point that you mentioned it's a fluid situation, one thing I kind of have wondered personally or could see is that, maybe especially at the end of the year when, Michael Hawkins is a little more mature, he's seen, a few college football games, not necessarily as a starter, but just from the sideline. If Jackson Arnold goes down and OU needs to get through the game, is Michael Hawkins the guy they turn to and Casey Thompson kind of the on-field coach, kind of a more mature figure in that locker room. And so that would be what's really interesting to me is how that progresses as the season goes on. But I think you're right, Ryan, that it's all dependent on the situation as to how those two guys would be used.
I agree with both those points. I want to add that Casey being 25 years old and coming off of a bad knee, there might be a little bit of a sense of, hey, let's see what we can get out of this guy. Let's see if his knee is ready. Let's see if his arm is still as strong. Let's see if he's, got that. He's talked about it before. This is my dream school. This is where I've always wanted to be. I wish I could have gone here as a freshman. All that stuff. He said he's got this passion for OU. I know Michael Hawkins does too, but I'm saying one guy's 25 years old. You might be able to get something out of him that if you don't run him out there in that situation you're talking about where you're not sure how long Jackson's going to be gone or what the situation of the game is or the season. If you don't run him out there, you might never get to run him out there. And then you have to turn it over to the young guy at some point. So there might be this sentiment among the coaches that, hey, let's see what we can get out of the old guy first. And if it's not good, then we'll run the young guy in there.
Yeah, it'll be hopefully that's a purely hypothetical conversation because that would mean bad things for Jackson Arnold, which is will kind of nuke everything that goes on with Oklahoma football this year, regardless of how good the defense is going to be. Flip that over to the defense. Let's go back to front here because I think the secondary is interesting, but not in the terms of who's going to be out there. When you talk about safety, regardless of who's listed as the starters, you're going to see a ton of Billy Bowman, a ton of Peyton Bowen, a ton of Robert Spears-Jennings. That's going to be a bunch of combinations. They probably even going to throw Orrs out there, would be my expectation, because I think all three of those guys are going to play a whole lot. Then you get over to corner and you start talking about Gentry Williams. If he's healthy, he's one of your guys. Who's that other corner? Is it Woody? Is it going to be Des Malone? And then you got Jacoby Johnson, Kenai Walker. I think all those guys are going to be in the mix, and I'm interested who's starting opposite of Gentry. But on the other hand, I think they're going to rotate a good deal with those guys that we've named, that I don't know if it is truly going to matter, if that makes sense, who that first guy out there is. And your cheetah's Kendall Dolby. I know that he's been maybe the most under talked about starter on this defense all offseason long. Kendall Dolby's had a great offseason. They're stoked about what Kendall Dolby's going to bring. He's a guy that I think got better and better and better as the season went on last year, as he was a late switch over to that cheetah spot, at least on game days. You're going to see your Samuel Omosigos, whoever is going to slide in behind him. But I think Kendall Dolby is going to be the first guy there. And I don't think there's going to be much drama when it comes to the secondary.
Yeah, I think that the secondary is pretty clear cut because you've got a lot of veterans at the top, and then you've got a lot of young guys who have potential, but who you'd rather probably start those guys, the veterans, let them play against the SEC competition, and sprinkle the younger guys in as you can. And I think that the linebacker room is pretty similar because you've got, at least with a guy like Danny Stutzman. Now next to him, Kip Lewis is still a younger guy, but he did play last year. He started multiple games, so someone who's not completely green and brand new to it. And I think that those two are pretty clear cut as probably your starters at the linebacker position, just with what we've seen from them last season. They've kind of proven it on the field, on tape, already in OU uniforms. I think that behind those guys, it'll be really interesting to see, where is Jaren Kanak stack in? Dasan McCullough is a guy who's supposed to be playing more interior linebacker this year. Does he make that? Or is he on the cheetah list? Is he still hurt? Where does Dasan McCullough factor in? But really, who you've written about Jaren Kanak, this is a big year for him. Where does he slot in on that first depth chart? Because we know that he's probably not going to be with that first team like he was last year. Is he next to Kobe McKenzie? Is he an on that? Or is it Lewis Carter? Because we've heard that he's had a great camp. He's looked really good. We've heard great things about him since he got to OU. Went to the same high school as Eddie Pierre-Louis. So that's a guy who will probably be on the depth chart as well. Is he an or with Jaren Kanak, or is Jaren Kanak just kind of ousted from that two deep after starting last year on the starting line? I think that's going to be something that's really interesting to kind of check out in that position group. But I think, again, the starters are pretty clear cut there with Stutzman and Kip Lewis. And then behind them, I think Kobe McKenzie is pretty solid that he's going to be a 2. Another guy who's put some good things on tape. Hasn't played a whole lot, but he's done enough that you feel confident that he can probably take a step forward and take a few more steps this year. Maybe not a full-time starter, but at least a little bit of a bigger role.
Yeah, I agree. Kip Kanak is a guy that we haven't heard anything from all preseason. Just in terms of a couple of times, you ask a couple of players, and like Danny Stutzman down in Dallas, and he's like, yeah, he's doing great. He's really, picking up the defense in his third year, and he's understanding the position. So I'm with you. I want to see where he is on the depth chart. Kip Lewis was second on the team last year, started the back half of the season, second on the team last year in tackles. The dude's unbelievable. He's exceptionally productive. He's got an unbelievable nose for the football. So I would expect that linebacker, the 2 starting linebacker spots are locked in. But I'm with Ryan on the cheetah. What are they going to do at cheetah? But I want to start my little segment here with the defensive line. You guys have heard of Stonewall Jackson. I want to know Stone or Jackson. I'm curious. I don't know if this is going to be like a big, like super competition, but these guys came from the same high school, IMG Academy. They both come with All-America credentials out of high school. One's a 5-star, one's a 4-star. David Stone or Jaden Jackson. Jackson has had a great camp. Everybody says the guy's on the Oklahoma breakdown, even predicted that he would start. So I think that's worth something because why? Because those dudes attend practice and they say who's getting they see who's getting the 1s and the 2s reps. Everything that we've seen in the open practices that we've seen, and these open practices might be totally scripted. Okay, the media's here for 10 minutes. Let's show them this. And then when they leave, we'll go back to what we normally do, right? That's possible. Nobody's more paranoid in the world than college football coaches. So, but I do think that DeJoun Terry and Dominic Williams getting the first reps at defensive tackle probably means they're starting at defensive tackle. But I want to see Stone or Jackson, man. Stone is you guys remember watching him last year. He's special, guys. He is special. He's not 5-star for a fluke. He's not 5-star. Somebody did him a favor. He's a 5-star for real. His get off, he stays low. He creates a collision. He changes the momentum when he collides with somebody. And his hands, I'll just say this. I'm not Jackie Shipp. I'm not Todd Bates. I'm not a defensive line coach. But the way he uses his hands to get off guys before you even know what you're doing are better than any freshman I've seen at OU since Tommy Harris. So having said all that about the defensive tackles, it'll probably be David Stone or Jaden Jackson or Grayson Halton or, 5 other guys. So who knows? But yeah, another guy I want to see where he is Caden Woolard. I expect that he'll be second team or Trace Ford, somebody like that. But my suspicion is that his place on the depth chart is not going to be known until after the game is over. I think he's going to be a productive player. Real quick, I'll go through these guys for you. I'll throw some names at you that I'm going to look at. You asked me who I want to look at on the depth chart. Danny Okoye, Reggie Powers, Michael Boganowski, Eli Bowen, 4 freshmen, all of them with the potential to play multiple positions. We've seen Dasan on his little scooter. He's not back at practice. So what's the plan for Cheetah? Is it going to be a temporary plan like Woody Washington gets it for a game? Is it going to be a situational plan like Kendall Dolby fills in for almost the whole game? Is it going to be one of those freshmen I mentioned in there? Another guy, super curious. Where is Jacoby Johnson lining up? We know he's a cornerback, but the cornerback room is stacked, and they're trying to get this kid on the field. Everybody talks about he's the best athlete on the team. Okay, I want to see him on the field. And then, again, just curiosity here. Being a Union kid, Union High School is like 2 miles that way from my house. I'm always going to be interested to see what they have planned for Jaden Rowe. I, for one, and then that dude's corner, I want to see that athletic ability somewhere on the OU football field. And then Trace Ford. Is Trace Ford 100%? Because remember, when he was 100% playing at an elite level at Oklahoma State, he was really good. And he hurt his knee. Last year was kind of a get-back year. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a ton of snaps and makes some plays on next Friday.
Yeah, I think that Miguel Chavis might, over the weekend, take his defensive end room to Riversport, maybe downtown or something like that, because they're going to be getting the oars out with those defensive ends. I think it'll be Ethan Downs, R. Mason Thomas are your 2 starters, which is actually where we were going to be last year coming out of camp covering this team until R. Mason Thomas sustained the high ankle sprain, and then at one point both ankles were sprained, all that stuff. But we've heard a ton about the defensive ends going to be kind of by committee, things like that. You're going to have PJ in there. You're going to have R. Mason Thomas, Ethan Downs, Caden Woolard, Trace Ford. What is Danny Okoye? It's going to be a group that, much like the offense line, in a different way, we're just going to have to see games to really get a handle on what that rotation is going to look like. But I think that those are the names we know, and I even probably have a good inkling that it's probably Ethan Downs and R. Mason Thomas as your first 2 guys out there. Then we'll see from there. Randall, was there anyone else that we haven't touched on that you're looking at, or is this the entire depth chart? We'll hit Hoover here in a second, too.
Okay. Go ahead, Randall.
I think that a lot of the guys that we talked about on the defensive interior, I'm just interested to see where some of those other guys, I think Grayson Halton will probably be included in that top group. But where does can a guy like an Ashton Sanders, who, again, he's a guy that we've heard multiple times from players, from guys like, even Brent Venables has talked about how good of a fall camp and an off season that Ashton Champ Sanders has had. So can he work his way onto the depth chart? That's one that I was really intrigued by. Who mentioned Boganowski, and we talked about the safety group. I think that where those guys slot in will be really interesting. I think that we've kind of touched on everyone. Eli Bowen's another guy at corner that I think it'll be interesting. Can he play his way into that depth chart? We've heard really good things about him, but I think everyone else we've kind of touched on already.
Real quick on kicker, guys, it's not an unimportant position. Brent Venables says they're going to make a decision through the end of this week, so we presume that means over the weekend, possibly early next week. It's when we get the depth chart on Monday, it's going to say Tyler Keltner or Zach Schmidt, or Tyler Keltner. How are they going to know until they know? They won't. So they're just going to have to roll somebody out there and say, okay, buddy, kick us a 47-yarder. You're the man. And if you're not, he's standing right over there.
And help all of our Twitter mentions until that moment.
Yeah.
It's interesting on that note, too, because we talked about Schmidt's issues were clutch situations. You probably won't face a clutch situation until at least week 3. So I wouldn't expect that kicker battle to be done until at least then.
It'll be something to watch. We'll obviously have all of our coverage, Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com as soon as the depth chart drops, as well as all of our game week coverage that'll get rolling in full on Monday as the first Brent Venable press conference, the first podium Brent Venable press conference of game week gets rolling. Hey, we had one more bit of SEC news that came out. It was a very busy Wednesday. I don't have real takes on this, but I've labeled this as a dramatic reading on the rundown here for the podcast. We have the SEC tiebreakers. There are no divisions, so you need a beefy tiebreaker system. As we found out with the Big 12 last year, it took us what felt like 10 years to get any clarification on what was on the website. The SEC dropped a 22-page PDF that explains step by step everything going down. This is a damn organized conference. It's all we asked for like 4 straight weeks and got the cold shoulder. So here you have it. In the event of a tie between teams competing for a place in the conference championship game, the following procedures will be used in descending order until the tie is broken. Number 1, head-to-head. If the two teams played in the regular season, they played head-to-head. Congratulations, they are headed to Atlanta. The second one is record versus all common conference opponents among the tied teams. Simple enough. If that record is the exact same. Number 3, record against the highest, best place conference opponent in the conference standings and proceeding through the standings among the tied teams. So if Georgia's number 1, you look at number 2, number 3. Did they both play Georgia? If yes, how did they do? If no, we go down the list. Duh, right? 4, cumulative conference winning percentage of all conference opponents among the tied teams. 5, capped relative total scoring margin versus all conference opponents among the tied teams. So score differential, but it's capped. That actually makes a lot of sense. You can still have your Dave Aranda situation, but you're not beating everyone by, I don't know what the cap is, but beating everybody by 70 and everybody by 40 might look the same. And then number 6, the random draw held. There's a teleconference, there's procedures, all that stuff. We have a 22-page PDF. It's on the SEC's website. I don't think that we're going to have a big conundrum of what does this mean and that mean and clarifications. I think the SEC may have learned from what the Big 12 went through, which was the Big 12 changing their tiebreakers, even though they claimed it was clarification. This is why you got to watch the YouTube. John Hoover Media, Hoover's flipping a coin back and forth, and he's letting us know that Vanderbilt, you have been eliminated from the SEC championship contention. Thank you. Good work. Poor Commodores. What is going on there? We don't have real takes, I guess, but Hoove, did you have anything? For me, it was just a lot of clarity. Thank you, SEC.
It's better to get it done before the season started than do what the Big 12 did and wait till November this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody fire up the online stuff and we'll have fun.
Then the Big 12 backtracked, and then they changed their mind, and then they flipped a coin, and then they said, never mind, and then they issued a new press release.
And they called that all a clarification, which was not the case. All right, we got one more thing before we get to our big award-winning prediction special. You can just fade us because it's always the worst segment, but we have a ton of fun doing it. The prediction, so stick around for that. But we are going to step outside the Oklahoma bubble kind of for 2 seconds. We did get some news. It's starting quarterback week, right? A lot of teams, the Monday of week 0, announced their starting quarterback all across the country, all that stuff. That was a week ago for Georgia Tech and Florida State. Go Jackets. But we had Boise State deliver. It's not Malachi Nelson. It's Madsen, who missed a lot of spring with an injury, which leads us down this, gentlemen. Are we beating a dead horse? Maybe. Do the Leo fans want it? Hell yeah, they do. Chris Robinson, where is he at? Did he have success as a starting quarterback at Oklahoma, John Hoover?
Don't fast forward through this. You're going to be sorry if you did. This is going to be a fun discussion for OU fans. No, he did not have a good career at OU.
He did not. Austin Kendall he famously pushed Kyler Murray, guys. We know that
almost took that starting job. He goes that close.
We know that Austin Kendall and Kyler Murray were basically 1A, 1B. Austin would have won the Heisman that year as well. Everyone knows what happened with Spencer Rattler. Then you look at, but Caleb Williams bailed Lincoln Riley out. Caleb Williams was Lincoln Riley's second choice behind Brock Vandegrift, who is now trying to start at Kentucky after being passed over by Stetson Bennett and Carson Beck. Kentucky did put out a scrimmage highlight video of Brock Vandagriff throwing a touchdown. I don't want to kill somebody for one play out of a scrimmage. It was a dead duck. It was dead when it came out of the hand. It was flying through the air. There were feathers everywhere. It was aggressive. We'll see what Mark Stoops has there. And now Malachi Nelson, who was the next chosen one, going every other year when you didn't hit like you wanted on Spencer Rattler. You got very lucky on Caleb Williams. You did not hit on Malachi Nelson, who's not even the starting quarterback at Boise State. Ay caramba, Hoove.
Yeah, let's do it. Malachi Nelson lost the job to Miller Moss at USC and then transferred. He's now on the bench at Boise behind Madsen, as Ryan said. Have you seen this guy? Have you seen pictures of this guy? He looks like a veteran of slow pitch softball, but he's only got warning track power. And also, RIP, the NIL fund at Boise State, right, for going all into Malachi Nelson and turning up a backup quarterback.
We call that a potato famine where I come from.
Another guy that Lincoln Riley wanted, Brock Vandagriff. You mentioned him. He couldn't beat out Stetson Bennett, former walk-on, JUCO transfer. He certainly couldn't beat out Carson Beck. Brock Vandagriff rebooting at Kentucky. So here's something that I read in the Kentucky Lexington Herald Leader, I think, paper there and covers Kentucky. Since 24/7 Sports took over from Scout, I guess is how long they've been rating this particular thing. There's been 2 quarterbacks who got a 5-star rating from the 24/7 Sports composite that did not start at least one game in their first 3 college seasons. And Lincoln's boy, Brock Vandagriff, is the second one. Crazy. 28 5-star quarterbacks started within their first year. Most of the 28 5-star quarterbacks started within their first 2 seasons at the school they signed with. So not Vandagriff. What are we doing? We're piling on Lincoln Riley because we know we're playing to our audience. We know you guys enjoy it. So get this. Here's my take. Lincoln Riley gets credit for a lot of things, obviously. Obviously. A brilliant quarterback whisperer, play caller, offensive coordinator, designer, all that stuff, right? He gets credit for some reason, all of Baker Mayfield's greatness, all of Kyler Murray's greatness, Jalen Hurts, taking him from a running quarterback, a tailback in the SEC and putting him in the NFL, right? Of course, he gets credit for Caleb Williams. He had him as a freshman and recruited him, right? But listen, all 3 of those guys had something. If you ask me, all 3 of those first guys I mentioned had something in them well before they got paired up with Riley. Some special quality, right? Think about it. Hurts, Murray, Baker all had something in them. I think you could say Caleb Williams probably does too. It's a little different. What Lincoln Riley doesn't get credit for is, or what he doesn't get, I should say, is a whole lot of criticism for the guys that he wanted. And Ryan ran down the list pretty good, including Malachi Nelson and Brock Vandagriff. Baker Mayfield, we all say that he fell into Lincoln's lap, which is true. Lincoln shows up, Baker shows up. Hey, let's play some football. Caleb Williams literally jumped into his lap. Okay. Caleb was, obviously the most special, the elite talent, the most special, number 1 draft pick kind of guy that Lincoln actually got out of high school. But Lincoln told him no. Remember? He had Vandagriff. He didn't want Caleb. Several times he said, no, you can't come here. I've already got my 1 quarterback. Caleb finally said, Caleb and his dad, I should say, said, okay, fine, we'll walk on. Okay. Vandagriff gets cold feet, goes to Georgia, which is his hometown school. Here's the list, you guys, of quarterbacks that Lincoln wanted. Connor McGinnis, 2015, Austin Kendall, Chris Robinson, Tanner Mordecai. Say what you want about Tanner. He turned into a pretty good quarterback on the college level. Spencer Rattler, who was the number 1 quarterback in the country. Chandler Morris. These were guys that Lincoln signed out of high school. And then Caleb Williams. So I put it to you guys. Have we overrated Lincoln Riley's ability to assess and evaluate quarterbacks?
I think that it's hard to say that a guy is overrated when he's also nailed the dartboard as many times as he has. You look at the NFL draft and not every number 1 overall pick is a hit, right? Not every scout is 100% correct. And maybe you can point to part of that as Lincoln not necessarily recruiting to a specific scheme or style and more recruiting to stars, right? The top line guys. But I do think it's interesting to kind of look at the guys who didn't work out and analyze why. What is it about them that didn't work out? And for guys like Brock Vandagriff and Malachi Nelson, we don't know because we haven't seen them play. What is it about them that did not translate from the high school level? Now, Ryan mentioned, Brock Vandagriff, we've kind of seen the wounded duck come out of his hand in that practice clip. Maybe the throw is not as pretty as once thought coming out of high school, but I just think it's interesting. What did he see in those guys, and what ended up preventing them from being successful at the collegiate level? Because you mentioned a guy like Tanner Mordecai. He might not have started at OU, but he did have some success at the collegiate level. He would have at least been a guy who can start at a place like Boise State, right?
Yep.
Unlike maybe Malachi Nelson. So what's the difference there between those two players? Again, because Malachi Nelson was the #1 overall recruit, whereas Tanner Mordecai, he's a 4-star recruit coming out of high school. And last thing I'll say on that, shout out to Idaho, Boise, Idaho, that gave us the piece of content for this, where this hat is from, Camas County, Idaho. So I just wanted to shout that out as well.
We appreciate that. Here's my last bit of advice. Let's try Pilates next. The yoga didn't work. Maybe the Pilates will help. Shane Beamer's certainly trying it, which is not a good sign for our friend out in South Carolina. That a story ran this week about South Carolina embracing Pilates. All right, up next, we're going to stay 10,000-foot view. It's the prediction special. What's all you going to do? Conference championships, national champions, bold predictions, all that fun stuff. Stay with us. I got to shut this blind, and then we'll reset and be right back here on the Sooners on that side.
As Ryan fades into the sunlight.
We haven't potted this late where the sun is setting. Disaster. Basically, I'm sorry to everyone. There's going to be a quick cut. You're not going to know it, but I got to shut this blind. So we'll be right back after this. Welcome back. Hey, I shut my blinds, and if you want to sponsor the next time I shut my blinds, just DM Hoove. Figure it out. If you want to sponsor the podcast, the Series on the Side podcast, DM Hoove, and it makes this little break where I don't set up my stuff properly a little less awkward for you guys. But without further ado, it's week. Go ahead, Hoove. Sorry.
I have a little interjection here. If you want to advertise with the podcast, allsoonerssi@gmail.com is the email. And let's give it up to Ryan real quick for hosting this thing. He's a much better host. He's a much more talented, much more polished host than I am. I'm a writer at heart. They told me I didn't have to do TV, video, radio when I was in college, so I didn't. Now I'm paying the price. So, no, I've tried hard. John Hoover Media is a fun channel, but Ryan is the pro. So we're going to stick with Ryan. Seriously, you guys should appreciate the fact that he's taking this thing over, and I love every minute of it.
All right, I just asked. I'm happy to do anything. I just don't want to do video editing. I'm really bad at it. It takes a long time.
I got stuck with it.
So really, it's him. Anyway, end of Love Fest. We're predicting it's week 0 at 11 a.m. I'll tell you where I'll be this Saturday, yelling at my television, hoping that Haynes King will stop turning the ball over like a madman. 16 interceptions a year ago. You guys have seen me watch Chelsea Football Club and Georgia Tech in the press box. It's not fun. That's what I'll be doing, which leads me to relax once Friday comes as Oklahoma gets it going. We're going to have a ton of fun. This is a massive year at Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com as Oklahoma goes through the SEC. We've talked about it. Talking season's over with both camp and the SEC. It's getting after it, which leads us to John Hoover. You have covered, is this now 21 years, 22 years? He's covered multiple decades of Oklahoma football, 21 years.
Yep.
In your 21st season, how many victories will you witness for Oklahoma? How many losses will you witness for Oklahoma? What's your take on the season here?
Well, let's go back in the Wayback Machine first. Let's recount from 2004 on, okay, how I predicted OU would do and what their actual record was. Hang on, I got it right here. It was like 136-0. I was perfect every time. I've never missed a game. I've never missed a pick. I've never missed a prediction on any of these. Perfect. It says so right here on my phone in the notes app, which I just started today. 136-0 is my record. So here we go. OU record will be 3-0 after 3 games.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I remain undefeated.
I bet they're gonna beat Maine 2 in your predictions.
That's down on the next page of my notes here. I'll scroll down and see what I've picked, but I'm pretty confident that's correct. They're going to beat Tennessee. I'm not confident in that. If we did one of those confidence picks, that would be at the very bottom. I'm not confident that Oklahoma's going to beat Tennessee. But I'm picking them to right now. As we start week 0, I'm picking them to beat Tennessee. They're going to go on the road the following week, guys, and they're going to beat Auburn. They're going to start 5-0. All right. Then they're going to lose to Texas, beat South Carolina, lose at Ole Miss, beat Maine, somehow beat Missouri. You're not going to like this. Lose to Alabama, lose to LSU in the season finale. 8-4 is the final record. Sooners do not make the playoff. We'll be in some Tampa Bowl in the middle of December at some point.
Who's got 8-4? Here's the thing with Oklahoma this year. I think everyone knows it. The schedule is the schedule. It's what's been talked about since the middle of last year when the schedule dropped. There's a ton of excitement. Is Oklahoma going to be the Nebraska of college football? No, that is not the case.
Colin
I do think
Cowherd.
it is. Yeah, I do think it is a bad case of timelines syncing up, specifically when it comes to the offensive line. I just don't think they're going to be able to protect Jackson Arnold at the level for a first-year starter, essentially a redshirt freshman, even though he's not a redshirt, to have the level of success Oklahoma's going to need on this schedule to go to the college football playoff. If you give me Oklahoma's schedule for last year, I'm picking them to go 11-1. I'm picking them to be in Arlington. I don't have any qualms about that. I do not have Oklahoma beating Tennessee. I think that Jackson Arnold's going to spend a lot of time in the grass. Frankly, I think Oklahoma's tackles are stiff, and I think that James Pierce is going to show everyone just how stiff they are. I think they will beat Auburn, though. I do think that has trap game written all over it with Texas on the horizon, Jordan Hare, all of that. The Cotton Bowl's a coin flip. We know that. The coin has tended to flip toward Oklahoma. Texas has the O-line. Oklahoma doesn't. I've got the horns there. I think Oklahoma will also lose to Ole Miss. This isn't the last time that Ole Miss will be brought up in this conversation as we get into everything. And I don't think the Sooners are going to beat Alabama. I think they will win a shootout at the end of the year against LSU. I think Missouri lost a lot defensively, including the defensive coordinator. I think they're going to regress. I don't think it's going to be hot seat time. I don't think it's going to be an awful year for Missouri by any means. I do not think that they're going to be able to take advantage of the schedule break that they've got. I also have Oklahoma going 8-4. I think there's going to be a lot of highs, a lot of lows, and I think a lot of it is going to be down to, frankly, the offensive line and Jackson Arnold not having enough time to be as efficient as Oklahoma will want him to be.
Well, I guess that makes me the bad guy out of all three of us because I have Oklahoma at 7-5. And so I will say I have I think where I differ from you guys, I included one loss that I think each of you guys didn't, whereas I agree with you, Ryan. I think that Tennessee, that defensive line, James Pierce specifically, they're going to be able to get to a young quarterback in Jackson Arnold. And of course, Tennessee's got a young quarterback on the other side in Nico Iamaleava. But I don't think the Oklahoma defensive line is going to be able to wreck shop on that Tennessee offensive line as much as Tennessee's defensive line will be able to do to Oklahoma. I have Oklahoma losing their next game to Ole Miss. I think that that's just such a tough team on the road that that's going to be hard for OU. I think that after OU beat Texas last year, the Horns are going to be really amped up for that one, and they're going to come out with an energy that we saw similar to what OU came out with this year. I have Texas taking that one. That's 3 losses, and then the last 2 games of the year, Bama and LSU. I think that those will be 2 really good teams. Bama specifically, we saw running quarterbacks really, really hurt Oklahoma's defense last year. There might not be a better running quarterback in the country than Jalen Milroe. And so I think that that's going to be a really tough game for Oklahoma to defend, regardless of whether it's in Norman or not. And then I think that LSU game, we saw OU struggle on the road last year. They're going to one of the toughest road environments in college football with a young quarterback who didn't start in a lot of those road environments last year, played in that BYU game. Let's see how he does against LSU. Sorry about the 18-wheeler driving by, but I think that I think that the LSU one's going to be challenging just because it's such a young team playing a young quarterback leading the team playing on the road in such a tough atmosphere. I think I'm with you though, Ryan, on that Missouri game. I think that Missouri just lost so much. Especially, you mentioned Cody Schrader, the running back, now trying to make an NFL roster. He was the Warfel Trophy winner last year. I mean, he racked up a bunch of yards. So, you lose a playmaker like that. Obviously, Luther Burden's going to be a dangerous threat at receiver. I think Oklahoma can overcome that one threat on the outside, though, because I think that their defense as a whole is going to be pretty sound enough to deal with what Missouri's got. I think the rest of the schedule is pretty self-explanatory, but 7-5, I don't think is out of the question. And I mean, if you said OU goes 6-6, drops a game to Auburn too, that wouldn't be shocking to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not going to be popular with that, but I think the flip side is I can go through it, and you mentioned it, Nico, Tennessee, true freshman. Oklahoma's defense can get them through that game because I've said this all offseason. If you just flip-flopped the bowl game that Nico had and the bowl game that Jackson Arnold had, and suddenly I think everyone is on Oklahoma as a dark horse SEC champion, and people are curious about Tennessee. That's the magic of a one-off bowl game. Auburn, Peyton Thorne, that might be his last game as a starter, and then suddenly the Tigers are a year away. Texas has got the O-line, but they're having to replace all their weapons on the outside on top of they've already taken a couple of massive blows to the running back room, and then they have to prove to me they can replace the production at defensive line, especially on the interior. Like, you can go through it, and as much as this is a bore for Oklahoma, it's a bore for Oklahoma if everyone is as good as we think. That inevitably is not going to happen. Injuries happen. So for me, I don't want to speak for everybody else. I do not see a blowout on this schedule in the negative way for Oklahoma. You could easily talk me into them going 9-3 if things go right. I just worry about the offensive line, and that's where we'll have that. We have plenty of time to unpack that. Shout out to the YouTube comments. Be sure you fire those in there. I'm sure that will be very, very popular with the Oklahoma fans. But we will move forward. SEC championship game at 8-4, 8-4, 7-5. I would be stunned if any of us have Oklahoma in the SEC championship game. I certainly do not. I have the Georgia Bulldogs going back to Atlanta once again. But I have the Lane train. I said this is not the last time we'll be talking about Ole Miss. That's the last hurdle they have to get over is, can they win the big one? They've got, 22 guys or 21 guys coming back. They've filtered everything else in, plugged holes, and I do wonder through the portal, and I wonder at what point the Georgia off-the-field stuff maybe seeps into them just not being the absolute wagon. So hotty toddy, everybody. I got the Lane train finally breaking through and winning an SEC championship, but this is not the last we're going to hear of Georgia in this conversation either.
Yeah, Georgia, and I'll take Ole Miss as well, because Alabama's got a 3-game stretch in the middle of the season. They go to Knoxville, they host Missouri, then they go to Baton Rouge. I think that's going to be too tough for them to overcome. I will take the Lane train also. The Senior Bowl handed out its watch list today. Ole Miss has more guys on the Senior Bowl watch list, which, take it for what you will, but they have seniors on that team. A lot of seniors on that team. A lot of seniors on that team who are NFL prospects. 21 guys. They lead the nation more than any other school. So I've been very impressed with everything that Lane Kiffin has done the last 3 years, including this year. I'm taking Georgia and Alabama. I'm sorry, Georgia and Ole Miss in the SEC title game.
Was Key Lawrence one of the guys on that Senior Bowl watch list?
I believe so, yeah.
Well, you know who you alluded to it. I'm going to pick Georgia and Alabama as my two SEC title game contenders. Now, I talked about Jalen Milroe a little while back. I think the things that we heard about him at SEC Media Days were really encouraging. After he had a decent year last year, I think you could see the progression that he made throughout the season. Now, you take a whole offseason of that, plus what we heard from his head coach, Kalen DeBoer, at SEC Media Days. And I think that he could be a really dangerous player. We know the rest of that roster is going to be stacked, as will Georgia's. And I think that it could be a really fun matchup between those two in Atlanta.
Could you have win in that game, Randall?
I will take Alabama to win that game. I think Jalen Milroe is going to put some real pressure on defenses this year. I think he'll be a Heisman contender.
All right, we've got Ole Miss, and Alabama. I guess shout out to Alabama and Mississippi, the hub of college football. We obviously cover the SEC now, so we went deep dive on that. We won't give our full breakdown for the rest of the way, but let's head over to the Big Ten, the land of no longer Jim Harbaugh. The Wolverines, the defending national champions, have won 3 straight Big Ten championships, but once we get to Indy, there will be no mixed signals and no stolen signals and no worry about any of that. I believe that Ryan Day claims and Ohio State claims they put $18 to $20 million into this roster. I think that'll get Ohio State to Indianapolis, and I think that we'll have an old friend. I will be cheering on Dylan Gabriel and hoping for some success for him. But I got the Buckeyes taking out the Ducks in what would be, I believe, the second meeting of the year and their third meeting of recent history, if that comes to fruition.
I got Ohio State over Oregon as well. Or Ryan Day, who has finally solved his Jim Harbaugh problem by letting Jim Harbaugh run off to the NFL. Ohio State over Oregon, or Ryan Day is fired. With this roster, with this talent, if he doesn't win the Big Ten and go to the playoff and get to the national title game,
at least he doesn't have the Sam Pittman issue. I don't think that Chip Kelly's going to be taken over like Petrino will be by the end of the time in Arkansas. Who do you have in the Big Ten title game, and who's your winner, Randall?
Well, I'm gonna sound like a broken record. I'm gonna go with the same as both of you guys, Ohio State and Oregon. But I am gonna have Oregon winning that game because I trust Dylan Gabriel more than I trust Will Howard, especially in a setting like that.
nice. I like that.
That means simply everyone in Vegas needs to hit Washington, Michigan, and Texas. I think that's what the history of this segment has shown. That is what is bound to happen. We are very familiar with Big 12 country, gentlemen, and I think there will be a new face at Jerry World. I'm a big Kyle Whittingham guy. I like Cam Rising coming back and being 7,000 years old, playing his fifth decade of college football. I actually think that Hoove's first year on the OU beat was Cam Rising's first starting year at Utah. I don't have them winning that game, though, because as much as there's an old head in control there, I've got Avery Johnson and Chris Kleiman's Kansas State Wildcats taking their second Big 12 championship game in 3 seasons down at Jerry World.
Actually, Ryan, the starting quarterback at Utah when I was on my first year on the OU beat was Alex Smith, 2004. Urban Meyer was the Utes coach and led him to an undefeated season. Y'all remember that?
I do. Alabama didn't want to be there, though, as we know. And Oklahoma doesn't want to be in their bowl game this year. Remember that.
That's right. And Alex Smith recently retired a couple of years ago, but showed his leg. Did you guys see his leg? Like, he posted a picture of it.
No likey.
Oh God, it was like something out of a medical journal. It was horrifying. Anyway, back to the picks. Yeah, I'll take you. We're in the Big 12, right? Utah,
yes,
and Kyle Whittingham and Cam Rising. I love Cam Rising's game. Over Oklahoma State, Mike Gundy got a ton of talent back, bunch of starters back, bunch of returning starts, bunch of career starts back. He's got an experienced team, but I think Utah's going to be a little bit too much in the title game.
Who I agree with you that Utah Oklahoma State title game is where we're headed in the Big 12. Ryan, Kansas State would have been my other pick to be in the mix there. I think, it'll be interesting to see how Avery Johnson does. I would go Oklahoma State over Utah because of what you pointed to, who not only that experience, but also the star power. You know, you've got a guy like Ollie Gordon who went over 2,000 yards from scrimmage last year, won the Doak Walker. Brendan Presley over 1,000 yards from scrimmage last year, solid receiver there on the outside. You got some other veterans, a veteran offensive line. We'll see what Alan Bowman can do, but I think at the end of the day, the rest of Oklahoma State's talent will win out against Utah.
Not that anyone cares. I do think that OSU, Arizona will go 4 wide with K-State and Utah. And I think that's going to be popcorn all year long in the Big 12. Outstanding stuff. The ACC, I think, is going to be boring. I think Florida State will beat Clemson for the ACC championship.
I got FSU over Miami in a walkover after going undefeated in the regular season, in conference play.
Well, you and I have a lot of the same teams because I have Florida State and Miami, but I'm gonna again go vice versa. I'm going Miami over Florida State. I think Cam Ward is going to be a good addition. Also, Damian Martinez, the running back there. I think that those two guys are going to be a really good offensive battery that Miami got out of the transfer portal. Again, we'll see if Cristobal can actually live up to the hype that this team has created. If not, maybe he's a guy who could be his seat could be getting a little warm, but I think that the talent on that team is going to be enough for them to win the ACC. Again, these 18-wheelers, not like in my predictions.
Yeah. ACC title game, Norvell versus Cristobal is a little bit of a mismatch for me.
Well, just don't kneel the ball out. Just keep going. We know that worked so well last year for Miami. Good thing for Cristobal. I don't think that Georgia Tech will be waiting for him in the ACC championship game. All right. In the new wild world of the college football playoff, which is actually the same method, model, whatever, that we've been using for the New Year's Six, the highest ranked group of 5 champion will also dive in. It would be too complicated, I think, for all of us to go through our 12 and get all the red yarn out and all that stuff. So we're just going to give our group of 5 qualifier into the college football playoff. There are a lot of really popular ones out there. I know the magazines are all over Boise State, which I don't think is unfounded. But how about our friends down in San Antonio? We have become very familiar with the Alamo Dome and everything that goes on down there. We have not bounced around into Jeff Traylor. I know they're replacing the quarterback. They've only got 15, 16 starters coming back, I think. But I think Traylor has shown he can coach him some college football. I think Tulane might have a little bit of a hiccup with transitioning off of Willie Fritz. That's more of a big believer in Willie Fritz. So give me UTSA to roll through and be a surprise program that 15 years ago could not have even imagined being mentioned in this stage, yet they might be in the college football playoff.
I'll take Boise State here. It's an easy chalk kind of pick. I've been a Boise State admirer since 2006 when I went to the Fiesta Bowl and watched them put a shocker on the Sooners and end up winning that game somehow through the magic. I gained a unique kind of perspective or respect for Boise State fans and the Boise State kind of attitude, that chip on their shoulder kind of attitude. And guys, how can you bet against Maddox Madsen? Huh? Am I right? No.
He looks like Thad Castle's son for anyone that watched Blue Mountain State.
They've got a tough stretch at Oregon on September 7th, and they host Washington State on September 28th. So there are potential pitfalls that also happen to be opportunities. But here's another thing. Here's a dark horse for you. Watch out for Tulane. Tulane has recruited well. They've restocked the kind of cupboard the last couple of years. They've got a new coach. Willie Fritz is in Big 12 now, sort of, I guess, at Houston. So it's Big 12, technically. John Summerall comes over as the new coach from Troy. He did some good things at Troy. They got a new quarterback. Michael Pratt is finally gone, and we all know what he was capable of from that game in Norman. But, guys, they got a quarterback named Ty Thompson out of the transfer portal from Oregon, former four-star quarterback. Wisconsin wanted him. Utah wanted him. Miami wanted him. Michigan State, LSU, all those guys wanted him. I think Tulane has a chance right here to be that team that gets into the playoff.
That would be fun, to see Tulane be that team that's competitive enough to get into the playoff, because that's one of OU's non-conference opponents. Sooners fans will get to see that team in, Gaylord Family Memorial Stadium in week 2, I believe, week 3 maybe. So that'll be exciting if Tulane is able to be that good. I'm glad that no one picked the team that I'm going to go with here, which is the Liberty Flames, who Ryan mentioned that, we've been on the college football has been in the format where the highest rated group of 5 team will get into the New Year's Six. That's exactly what Liberty did last year. Now, they got destroyed by Oregon. They got steamrolled, but they were the highest rated group of 5 team last year. They brought back their quarterback, Caden Salter, who had a really solid year last year. And again, their schedule is going to be easy again this year, being in their conference. So I think that they're a team that could be poised for another run, especially given what's on the line this year, knowing that there's a chance for the college football playoff at the end of the year. I think that's a team that could be ranked high enough at the end of the year to get in.
Yeah, with so much controversy going on last year with who was the 4, was Florida State going to get left out? I think that dominated, and rightly so much what the committee had. I would have been really interested if we were in this year's model, what the conversation would have been between then SMU and Liberty, because SMU had the non-conference losses as they went out and played a more rigorous non-conference than what Liberty had. Obviously, we saw them in Norman, all that stuff. It would have been really interesting because I really think that once Jordan Travis went down and we were hurtling toward chaos, I think that everything beyond the 5 or 6 teams that were being considered for the top 4, it was just they got locked in, and if someone lost, they shipped them out and just slid everybody up, all that stuff. So we'll be interested to see if Liberty are able to reprise that role, because I think they'll be really good. My only reservation with them when I was looking at it was, are they going to get dinged for the schedule? Not they're going to have more attention than last year, but we shall see. Like we said, we're not going to go through the whole 12-team playoff, grid it out. It'll be hard in the audio format. So let's just do our national champion. I told you boys that we weren't done with Georgia. I don't have them lifting up a trophy in Atlanta. I do have the Georgia Bulldogs marching all the way through this 12-team playoff, taking advantage of a raucous home atmosphere in Athens, because as not the SEC champions, they won't be given a bye, all that stuff, and absolutely mowing through. I have a rematch of one of the better college football semifinals we've seen, that CJ Stroud Ohio State team and Georgia, the New Year's perfectly syncing up with the missed field goal, all that stuff. I think the Buckeyes get their revenge. I've got Ohio State and all the money that they've spent over Kirby and the Georgia Bulldogs. And And of all things, I did not see myself declaring Will Howard a national champion at Ohio State. Yet here we are.
Boy, Will Howard's got a shot with this roster at being a legend at Ohio State, something he probably wasn't going to be at Kansas State because he wasn't going to play this year because he lost his job. Kind of like Dillon Gabriel lost his job at Oklahoma to a young five-star hot shot young quarterback. So anyway, I digress. I too will take Georgia over Ohio State. I think Ohio State has the most talented roster top to bottom in college football this year. That may not be disputable when we evaluate the NFL draft next spring. But here's the deal. Kirby Smart against Ryan Day is a mismatch for me. The smart money is on Kirby all day. See what I did there?
I'll let my friends in Athens know. They'll be stoked. Start the parade. All right, Randall, we've got 2 Georgia-Ohio States. What do you got going in the Natty?
Well, I'm going to go completely off the reservation here then. I guess not completely off the reservation because I still do have Georgia making the cut, but I have them playing Oregon. And I think that again, you mentioned how good of a roster Ohio State has. I think Oregon's got a really, really strong roster too. Really strong skill position players. We saw what Dillon Gabriel could do. Again, OU fans, sure, they'll have, some gripes with him, but another year older, you have to think that college football is just going to be that much slower for him. He was already good last year at OU. I think, again, with a really good roster around him, you'd expect him to be good again. Dan Lanning, I think he's proven to be a good coach. I think this is the year that they can take the step forward, get all the way to the national championship. But I do have Oregon falling to Georgia. I think that in the end, Carson Beck is talented enough to push what's a good defensive roster. They've got good skill position players. Even if some of these guys are, getting into some trouble off the field, they've got good enough skill position players from recruiting 5-star after 5-star after 5-star that they will still have good enough players to put on the field in whatever matchup they're in. And again, I think with a talented quarterback like Carson Beck, a guy who's going to be fighting to be a first-round draft pick, and the monsters on defense that Georgia rolls out every year. Again, Michael Williams, he could be a really, really high pick in the draft too on that Georgia defensive line. I think that the star power is just going to be too much for a team like Oregon, Dillon Gabriel to overcome. And I think Georgia in the end wins the national championship.
Give me all of Lanning v. Kirby round 2. I would be here for it. I would have a ton of fun. And with no dog in the fight, go Dillon. We love you. A great dude to cover. I really, really enjoyed covering Dillon Gabriel. Really, really good dude. All right, let's get into our final little bit here. We always lay out a couple of bold predictions as it pertains to the Oklahoma Sooners. I will go first here on this front. While I picked Oklahoma to go 8-4, we talked about it. I think it's going to be really close all year long in a bunch of these games. I think the Sooners are going to be in a ton of them. And as a result, I don't think that a record of 8-4 is going to ding some of these guys for the national honors, because I think that people are going to recognize, and I think a discussion around Oklahoma going all the way into Alabama week is going to be, if they can beat Alabama, if they can beat LSU, they're going to be 9-3. In my world, that's happening, and I think that they're going to be on that playoff line all the way through the finish. And I think that the college football world is going to get to know Deion Burks a little bit here. He's explosive. He made Bruce Feldman's Freaks list, and I think that Deion Burks is going to be a finalist for the Biletnikoff this year. I think a lot of what Oklahoma does, boom or bust, is going to be Deion Burks is down there somewhere, and I think that Jack Sarle's going to be chucking rock all year long. I think they're going to use them in the screen game. I think they're going to try to use them jet sweeps, heaven forbid, all that stuff. I think that Oklahoma is going to try to run the ball a lot. I think they're really happy with what they've got run blocking, and I think that they're going to just try and lull some teams to sleep, beat them over the head with Deion Burks over the top. I think it's going to be uber successful. I think Deion Burks is an excellent football player, and I think he's going to have some numbers, especially as Oklahoma maybe chases a couple of games in my world, to be a Biletnikoff finalist. And that is my bold prediction for Oklahoma this year.
That is a bold one. And I will counter that by saying Oklahoma's wide receiver core is probably too spread out, too diverse for any one guy to stand out enough to win the Biletnikoff. But you make a good argument for Deion. He is an unbelievable athlete, and he is a freak. I saw a photo of him where his leg was planted, and it looked like one of Earl Campbell's thighs for a 5'10 receiver. That dude is chucked. Anyway, my bold prediction for Oklahoma 2024, Austin Stogner will not have 40 catches this year.
I tried to tell you. I
Does
knew
that
it was
make up for
bold.
last year?
It was bold, and I tried to say, John, I know the whole point is it's bold predictions. He's always aged poorly, but no, don't.
It's bold, not idiotic. Okay, come on, Hoove. It's bold, it's not crazy, not stupid. It's just bold. So no, I will stick with the tight end theme here, guys, and we don't have to make fun of my my bold prediction after every game like we did last year.
Yes, we did.
Here's my bold prediction. At some point, Caden Woolard, the defensive end transferred from Miami, Ohio, and Bauer Sharp, the tight end transfer from Southeastern Louisiana. They're going to be blocking and tackling and going at each other, and they're going to get into a scrap in practice. And the earth is going to crack, and the skies are going to open and rain blood, and both players will be imbued with some magical, special, strengthening power. I don't know. They might even partially meld together. Caden Woolard's going to turn into like a panther, and Sharp's going to morph into an octopus, and they're both going to lead their respective positions this year at OU in sacks and receptions. They might even get a little all SEC run at the end of the year. I like both of those guys. We talked to those guys last night for the very first time since spring in terms of a football practice, right? We got to talk to them, I think, last February when they arrived. I came away impressed with both of them, both of their attitude, their kind of no-nonsense persona. You know, they're veterans of college football. Now, I didn't try to block or tackle either guy, but I did detect in them kind of a sense of toughness, chip on their shoulder, can't wait to prove themselves, can't wait to prove everybody wrong, that kind of attitude. So we'll see. I'm looking forward to watching both of those guys play, and I wouldn't be surprised if they both are on the award circuit toward the end of the year.
We got Woolard, sack leader, and Bauer Sharp leading the tight end room in receptions.
Yep.
To be good. Beautiful, beautiful. Randall, over to you, my friend.
All right. Well, I think mine is going to be topical given some of the discourse on OU Twitter the past few weeks. I will say that Michael Hawkins is going to score four touchdowns in one game this season. In a single game, Michael Hawkins will log 4 touchdowns. Now listen, that sounds crazy, but you have to think some of these teams that OU is going to play, like a Temple, like Maine, these teams are not very good college football. Well, I don't want to talk too much on what Maine has because I don't really know, but it's an FCS opponent and it's not a top line FCS opponent. So you think that they're not able to put out what a team like OU should be, right? Well, Michael Hawkins will probably get a lot of run in those games. That's a young guy that they're going to want to build up for his time whenever he's starting at Oklahoma. So I think that he'll get a lot of run in some of these blowouts. He's a guy who we've heard a lot about through fall camp and really the offseason in general being kind of taking teammates by surprise at how quickly he was picking things up, how good he was performing. And I think that with his dual threat ability, being able to attack defenses through the air, being able to run a little bit as well. We saw that through the spring whenever we were able to get some glimpses of practice. I think that that's going to be able to, add to some of the scoring variability. Maybe my original prediction was 300 yards. Seems like he'd have to play a little too long to log 300 yards. So 4 touchdowns seemed a little more doable. I feel like in a quarter, a half, if he gets really hot, it's possible. It seems like a stretch, but again, a talented guy. We've heard he's been good through fall camp. If OU gets up big on one of these teams, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
I like it.
Here's the good news for Oklahoma fans. This segment, historically, famously, I picked North Carolina to win the ACC, and Sam Howell went out and got curb stomped in week 1. Based off of the conglomerate predictions here, I think that a 10-2 and a trip to Atlanta might be on the cards for the Oklahoma Sooners, given our track record.
Don't forget Josh's pick a couple of years ago. He picked OU to go 12-0.
I wasn't gonna. They went 6-7.
Austin Stogner catching 40 passes is not the worst pick we've made on this segment, by the way.
That is true. That is true.
Josh's last bold prediction as a part of the team was predicting OU to go undefeated.
Beautiful stuff. Beautiful stuff. I'm a sticky note like sicko. I've got like 8,000 of them on my desk. So we'll see. I may just have to put this in a notes app somewhere. I doubt these sticky notes are going to make it all year long, but having a ton of fun there. We always love this. I hope you do too, because it's the return of college football. And think of me fondly. I hope this Saturday. Or maybe you're so mad at me that you're just rooting for the Knowles because I picked OU to go 8-4. Either way, enjoy the college football weekend. It will go so fast this season. It always happens every year. We look up and we're leaving the Cotton Bowl and we're rationalizing that blink and we're halfway through the football season. So I hope that you all are going to enjoy all the coverage. We have big plans for this season. Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com is the place to go. And for all the YouTube content, John Hoover Media. If you're around here in the spring, you remember the softball show, a version of that for football will come back through. So all the press conferences all year long will be on Hoove's YouTube page, as well as some extra content, stuff like that, as the SEC is here and we ramp things up. And remember, guys, Monday, 11:30-ish, Brent Venables' first press conference of the year. Everything is to say, the depth chart drop, all of that will be at Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com. Just bookmark that. It's free, and it's your one-stop shop for a ton of great Oklahoma content all year long. But we've gas bagged long enough. For Hoove in the 918, for Randall, safe travels, my friend, the trooper today. Remember to head to the website for all of his content with the Michael Fasusi commitment. And for me, Ryan Chapman, back here, we will talk to you guys on the podcast next Thursday.